As a kid, I remember being blown away by Knights of the Old Republic. Now, I know that's a weird way to start a video about D&D, but just stick with me. Now, I didn't just like KOTOR for its branching narratives. I liked it for a lot of other things. Its inventory system, the way it handled armor, weapons, lightsabers, force ability, stims, all kinds of stuff. I remember it being the first game where I really looked past just the story in it and started really analyzing the system and the numbers that made my characters work so I could make them even better. I even remember one day discovering how dependent the game was upon dice rolls. And the dice rolls you wouldn't even notice unless you inspected like combat text. So they were there, but they were kind of hidden in plain sight. I remember this blowing me away, but at the same time, to my 10-year-old brain, this made perfect sense. And for the first time, I wasn't just falling in love with the game for its story, but also for the system behind it. Flash forward a few years later, I'm 14, and my friend has introduced me to Dungeons & Dragons 3rd Edition. Now, up until that point, I've never played a tabletop RPG before, but I like fantasy and I'm up for new things, so I give it a try. So that first time I get to the table, my friend hands me a copy of a blank character sheet he printed off at school the day before, and a copy of the player's handbook. I open it up, and there it is, as plain as can be. The same exact system from Knights of the Old Republic. Health points, critical rolls, weapon upgrades, different types of damage, it's all there. In a different form, but it's there. Instantly, I felt connected enough to this game that I wanted to jump right in. At the same time, I knew that there were a million aspects of it that would take me forever to learn and forever to discover. My first character ended up being a dragonborn paladin of Bahamut named Silverwing. And over dozens and dozens of sessions, he would become unique, personal, and kind of very special to me, because he was my character. Today, over 10 years later, I still have an ongoing D&D 3.5 game with that same group of players that were at that table so many years ago. We branched off from other games instead of just D&D, but D&D still holds a very special place to me. It was my gateway to the hobby. It was kind of the first tabletop RPG I had any experience with, and because of that, I always think of it very fondly. Fast forward to this year, and it's 2020, and the world is falling apart, and a friend suggests that we try out Dungeons & Dragons online. Now, for some reason, even though D&D is all about playing with your friends and creating a story together, D&D licensed multiplayer games have always been hits or misses. While there are some gems like Neverwinter Nights and its sequel, when I think of D&D multiplayer games, my thoughts trail towards games like Sword Coast Legends, or those weird D&D Facebook games that came out a few years back, or even the Neverwinter MMO. So while I grew up accepting that D&D could be a great framework for video games, I also acknowledge that when it came to multiplayer games, often the rule set got lost in compromises, or it ended up bogging down the gameplay so much that it was unrecognizable. And of course, I'm talking about multiplayer games, where balance is often a much bigger issue than it is in single player games. D&D has a long list of very great and very popular single player games, going back years and years and years. Lastly, I recall that in the past, when looking at Dungeons & Dragons online, I was kind of turned off by it. And fortunately, the truth is, it was because of secondhand information that I received about the game. I heard that the game was difficult to get into, I heard that it had a very weird and kind of outdated monetization system, so a lot of stuff was locked behind paywalls, and you just couldn't get access to it, and that kind of felt scammy to me. And also, just looking inwards to the game from the outside, it didn't really look visually nice. It looked like something that hadn't been updated in quite a number of years. And for new players looking into a game, that can be kind of a turnoff. Anyway, with World of Warcraft on the back burner and Amazon's New World being delayed for another several months, and there not really being any other MMO that I was interested in at this time, I figured, okay, let's go ahead. Let's give Dungeons & Dragons Online a chance. Let's try it out. At best, maybe it'll be something we can poke fun at. But now it's 2 months later, and I couldn't have been more wrong. This game is very special, very unique, and has been an absolute pleasure to play. And I believe MMO players deserve giving themselves a second chance playing this, and I believe D&D players are missing out if they're not at least trying this out. After World of Warcraft came out, it seems like every MMO decided to go one of two paths, especially fantasy MMOs. They either tried to be exactly like WoW, and they died because at best they were a knockoff, or they didn't try to be like WoW, and they died because lack of players. DDO is kind of the exception for me because it's a fantasy MMO that never really compromised its vision, stuck to it over the years, and somehow has stayed alive with new content and new expansions throughout all of that. Now, right off the bat, while going through character creation, you see a recognizable system: classes, skills, feats. This is all the trademark terminology that you would expect in any D&D game, but we know that simply just having these terms doesn't make for a good D&D game. We need to see their effect on the character and actual impact on gameplay. What really makes tabletop RPGs so great is that, for the most part, you are given a lot of choice on how to craft your character, and the dozens of little choices you make help craft a very much personalized experience. Not every game with feats truly offers this experience. Often, it's just the illusion of choice. Many RPGs, especially MMORPGs, sadly have to sacrifice customization in favor of balance. For instance, if we want to look at the other D&D MMO, Neverwinter, it has feats, but they don't really pop up that often, and they're really limited by class choice, and they don't really affect your character all that much. They kind of look more like a normal talent tree you might see in other MMOs. But in DDO, feats are not only numerous, they have a huge impact on your character. For instance, my Warlock character's feats allowed him to play as a melee combatant, like a swashbuckler dancing around with a short sword, instead of maybe a traditional ranged caster. On top of that, the class and race that your character takes unlocks enhancement trees. Now, to be honest, these are very much like traditional talent trees in other games. However, one big difference is that enhancements are not the primary way of building your character. It's just one of the ways. You can divide your points among any number of trees however you wish. They are not dependent upon your feat choices or other aspects of your character. In fact, they simply just augment the other bigger choices you have already made and will make. For example, on my Dragonborn Paladin, I wanted to make him as beefy as possible, and I found one weakness in him was that this resulted in a rather slow character with very little maneuverability. With a little point allocation in the Dragonborn Ancestry tree, I was able to unlock a Memory of Flight ability that helped him in this area. This choice was not required or made for me, it was simply something that I wanted for my character, and the option to pursue it was there. Also, skills. How can I forget skills? They actually matter in this game. Just to name a few, your spot and search allow you to find traps other players can't find, your balance helps you get back up faster after you've fallen down, your hide allows you to sneak past enemies, and that's not just something for rogue, it's something anyone playing any class can build up towards. The points you put in your skills have real impact on the way your character plays. I love World of Warcraft, but one of my biggest gripes is the rigidity of the classes in that game. You very much are the talent tree that you choose, and that's it. Each class and spec has a very different playstyle, and if you don't like that playstyle for that class or spec, the only suggestion is that you just play a different class. That's kind of it. In the past, when trying out a new MMO, I almost always get the same exact advice from veteran players. They always tell me the same thing, and it's to go online, find a guide for your class, figure out the meta for your classes, and then build in accordance to that. DDO has class guides and build guides, but they're not really there to tell you how to play your character. They're there just to kind of show off unique builds that people have created over the years. DDO really does reward you for taking the time to build your character in whatever way you want, to develop the play style that you want to play, not what the developers want you to play. Now, besides character design, the game does shine in several ways that I believe make it not only appeal to D&D players, but also make it unique among the MMO market. As you journey to Stormreach, the first real city you'll encounter after the tutorial area, you'll find that quests are structured a little bit different than you might expect. In a city, you'll find quest givers that will ask you to explore dungeons within the city, and each dungeon is a unique experience you can either do by yourself or with a group. Some of these quests stand by themselves, while others are part of a much greater storyline. What you're not going to find are quests like kill 10 boars and collect their teeth, or escort this person to the next area. Quests are stories, not just tasks, and because of that, the dungeons for them feel like part of the world instead of areas separate from that world. For example, one of my favorite quests so far in the game was in an area of Stormreach called House Firelon, and there's this playwriter there, and he wants you to hire a hill giant to act in his play for authenticity. And you end up going to find this hill giant, and most of the quest is just dialogue with him as you're explaining to him what acting is, what theater is, and also gaining his appreciation and admiration through several smaller quests. It's a really unique MMO experience I didn't expect to have. Broadpit loves stories. Betty likes them too, but she doesn't talk much. She's more of a listener, you see. And when she does tell a story, it's always the same one, with a really ugly end. That's great. I mean, you both like stories in your own ways. You see, theater is an ancient art of storytelling. Theater is a story told by multiple people at once, called actors. That's silly. If you have people talking over each other, that's just rude and you can't hear anyone. And what if these actors disagree? What then? Well, that's not a problem at all. Each actor represents a person, and we're really explaining the entire concept of theater to this guy. Oh, that's not a problem at all. Each actor represents a person in the story. They pretend to be them. And also, there's this area where you can encounter his nephews that are living nearby, and we accidentally killed them. So on our way out, the hill giant, actually, we got to see him mourn for his nephews.
You're the worst healer.
I swear I was targeting him. Like,
maybe be a little less selfish with your spells, then we'll be okay.
You got me.
Nope. We gotta go around.
Yeah, I clicked on him. Like, I had this double ring circle. I'm pretty sure. If I didn't, then maybe I just didn't notice.
Did you tell him to sit there?
No. For any question you have, look up Voodoo Spice videos on YouTube.
Oh, he's saying goodbye to his nephews. Oh, sad. Yes. Goodbye, my dear nephews.
Damn it, Dylan.
You fought well on your last day. So, we'll move on from that. Now, there are more open world areas called wilderness zones that feel more like traditional MMO areas. However, that's not really what I've been looking forward to. The quests, the adventures, the dungeons, those have been the highlight of the game for me. So much so that the wilderness areas feel very much like side stuff that are just connected to the quest. Now, as my group, a party of 5 or 6 seasoned MMO players, are working their way through the game, for the first several hours, we kept on asking ourselves the same question over and over and over again. And that's, where are the bosses? We're working our way through all these dungeons, and there are no bosses. Now, like I said, a lot of us come from World of Warcraft, so when we think of PvE content, we think of a certain rhythm to it. You fight weaker enemies, trash, and those lead up to a harder enemy with mechanics, a boss. Trash, boss, until you complete the instance. The unique mechanics of the boss are what make for the experience, and mastering those mechanics as a group is what makes for success. I really had to change my way of thinking when it comes to Dungeons & Dragons Online, because dungeons and quests in this game are not designed in that way at all.
I can do it.
Alright, yeah, just stay. You do it, Corner.
Let me go down too, because I did okay last time.
Alright, go for it. I'm just gonna stay here.
I kind of believe in myself.
No, that's good, Matt. That's good that you believe in yourself.
The difficulty of dungeons and DDO comes from traps and puzzles. And yes, occasionally a stronger enemy, but not always. Often you're not beating a dungeon as much as you're adventuring through it and surviving it. I will say one thing though, this can be frustrating for certain types of players. The game does expect you to have a well-balanced party, even though it does not require you to at all. Often there were traps that were impossible to avoid, and we lacked the proper skill level to even spot them.
Occasionally, like breaks
I
traps
died.
and shit. Oh, hey, it's
Hey.
you.
Welcome back.
What'd you die from?
I got to the
Good
lightning and I
stuff.
played it cautious. I'm like, I'll just wait,
Okay,
and
now-
then I ended up waiting. I also recall one night being stuck on a unique puzzle that was required to free an NPC for well over an hour. We eventually gave up and used the key we found, the other route to freeing him. It was good that the game gave us this option, but the puzzle felt more like a test of our will than our actual characters. But honestly, that's fine. That's refreshing, even. In truth, it feels like the D&D experience. I can't name a campaign or even just a small module that me and my tabletop group have jumped into without at least having some kind of discussion of if we're a balanced party or how can we balance each other out in some way. Building a party with strengths and weaknesses and abilities in mind, that feels very D&D to me, and that's a core aspect of this game. And of course, what would D&D be without magic items? Never in any MMO have I experienced items being as impactful as they are in Dungeons and Dragons Online. When I think of MMO items, honestly, I think of colorful numbers attached to recycled portraits. That's it. In that case, you want to find the item that gives you the best bonus to the stats that best help you to do damage or heal or whatever your character's role is. That's not the case in DDO. Gear in DDO actually has magical effects. Yes, there are numbers and they do impact your stats, but there are so many magical traits that are simply too handy to ignore. Since the focus of encounters is surviving traps and solving puzzles, magic items that make those encounters easier are priceless. Let me give you an example. In the very first tutorial dungeon, you are given a ring that allows you to breathe underwater temporarily. You get this 5 minutes into the game. I'm rank 50 and I still use this ring all the time. Yes, I have better rings with better stats that I swap in and out, but the utility function of the water breathing ring is so useful. I'll never sell it. Later on, I got a Cape of Feather Falling that allows me to avoid fall damage but also float past certain traps. I have a ring of Cure Light Wounds that fixes my health up on lower characters when I'm heavily damaged. I have a trinket that allows me to get into a Barbarian Rage on my Paladin. That's not to mention all of the scrolls, wands, potions, and other items that directly give any character access to the massive spell list that can directly impact the game. And when it does come to actual fighting enemies, having the right weapon for the right enemy makes a huge difference. I remember one of my first times playing DDO, we were fighting Ghost in a dungeon, and I was doing next to no damage. I couldn't quite figure out why. There you go.
Yeah, it's right there.
Dylan, did you just fucking murder that man?
Undead rats, undead rats!
He was undead.
Oh god, there's a ton of spiders dropping.
Oh my god, so
Yeah.
many fucking. I'm dead.
Yeah, like 4 shades popped up in Penny. I can only do so much to these guys because they're in Portal.
Yeah, me too. And undead rats keep spawning.
Okay, I got Crest of the
Behind
Sword.
you.
Someone hopped in the chat and let me know that I needed to pick up a weapon with Ghost Touch. Now, I know what Ghost Touch is. It lets your weapon do damage to incorporeal enemies. I play the tabletop game. It's in there too. But I hadn't considered that this was something that actually made it into the MMO. Not just that, but literally dozens of other weapon effects interact with monsters in unique ways. Bludgeoning weapons are good against skeletons, sharp weapons cause oozes and slimes to split apart and multiply, holy weapons are effective against evil enemies, and really so much more. Just like skills, feats, enhancement points, magic items are another way of customizing your character, making it unique, telling their journey through your actions that you now have available to you. I've always wanted an MMO like this that can capture that D&D experience of gaining items through your journey and not just having the one with the biggest number. And so far, Dungeons and Dragons Online is the only one that it comes remotely close in that area. Now, the game isn't perfect by any means. First off, if what you enjoy the most in D&D is communal storytelling, then what you're going to find in this game is not many options to really feed that desire. There aren't many branching narratives. There's not really many choices for your character to make as far as the story goes. Dungeons & Dragons Online is not a replacement for tabletop D&D. It's still a very structured MMO, and that includes a story. Additionally, graphics-wise, the game could use a little bit more polish. Some of the newer areas are very breathtaking, and you can tell that they are newer just by the way they look.
Maybe Matt will talk to him or something. I don't know.
Oh, it's just like I imagined.
Is it?
Well, I mean, I didn't really imagine it. The books had art. But it's just like the art in the books. And the music's perfect.
That's pretty cool.
Come on, loading screen, hurry up. Oh wow, yeah, this is really cool. And this music, oh my god.
I know, this is amazing music. But some of the older areas, and even especially the open world areas, like the wilderness zones, they appear outdated, and they could use a level of polish, and that can be a big turnoff to a lot of players. And to be honest, the game is not super new player friendly. It does not hold your hand after the tutorial area. It doesn't walk you from one zone to the next or tell you what you need to do next. That can be frightening to a lot of new players that are kind of used to that in MMO games. But on the other hand, it is a game that rewards you for exploring and going out on your own and being part of the world. Even then, though, there were times where I was just kind of confused on what we needed to do next or what we should do next. And the only real remedy was either to hopefully get an answer from general chat or even to just do a quick Google search. This isn't exactly unordinary for a lot of MMOs, but it is something that the game could develop a little bit more, and I believe is currently working on. My biggest gripe in the game is that I feel its monetization system is very intimidating to new players that want to jump into the game, but might not know someone that's already playing. DDO is a free-to-play MMO. However, many races and classes are locked behind a paywall. Some of these can be earned in-game, such as the Drow race, while others simply need to be bought, like Dragonborn. On top of that, there is a cash shop that accepts DDO points, which can be purchased using IRL money, and also there are astral shards that can be bought using those DDO points and are spent on certain items in-game. On top of that, there is a VIP premium service that removes certain paywalls and gives you certain advantages. It's a lot. DDO's monetization system is confusing. It's the malformed byproduct of 100 different updates over the years, adding system on top of system. And it can turn off a lot of new players, but really it shouldn't. In truth, when we look at the monetization system, we can break it down to something a lot simpler. The most necessary purchases from the cash shop were the individual adventure packs and the expansions. Those adventure packs are now currently free for everyone until August, and there is a coupon from Standing Stones Games, the DDO's developer, that will let you keep the packs permanently if used by then. You can find the code on the screen right now and in the description of this video. The expansions are on sale for $1 each. With that out of the way, my only suggestion is that you maybe have at least one player with the VIP premium service, which is about $10 a month. It allows you to access dungeons and quests at any difficulty the first time around, and makes leveling a lot easier. And even then, a VIP membership is not necessary at all. In fact, you could not spend any money on this game right now, and still have a really great experience. Standing Stones severely needs to update their monetization system. It's outdated. It's something from 2006, and it needs to change. But once we figured out what was necessary and wasn't necessary, we realized the system in place was not a deal breaker at all. The free adventures right now given out by the developers really does make DDO a worthwhile investment in your time, and if you choose, your money. To me, D&D is a tool for bringing a fantasy character into existence, allowing you to manifest them in a way that you can go with them on adventures, exploration, quests, you name it. And this is the first MMO in a long time where I feel like the character that I'm making is actually a unique character, a member of that world, a character of my own design, and not just a class or a skill tree. Hey, we brought some friends. I hope that's cool.
Everyone sit in a chair. Let's have dinner.
No one sit in the chair. Right.
I'm
Everyone
sitting.
make their own chair.
Everyone has to do something different.
You gotta go through some reaction there.
We're eating silverwing for dinner.
Bon
What's
appetit.
for dinner.
I never got any pastries, so I don't really see. Right now, D&D, really all tabletop games are having this amazing renaissance where there's an influx of players just joining the hobby every single day. And it's so large that even a couple years ago, we wouldn't have thought it would have been like this. And on the other hand, the MMO market is just so oversaturated with quick attempts to get players money that there's nothing really interesting going on. It's a lot of the same stuff over and over and over again. This is really why I think that MMO players need to give Dungeons & Dragons Online a second chance, and they might find something in it that they've been looking for all along and just didn't realize was there. And for tabletop D&D players that have been seeking that game that gives them customization and gives them that same feeling of building a unique character, Dungeons & Dragons Online really does meet that experience. And at the end of the day, it fits its name, and it offers you just exactly what it says: Dungeons and Dragons.
Uh-oh.
Oh shit!
Shit!
Dragon.
Oh god!
Ah.
That scared the shit out of me.
Oh god.
Get off me.
I got you, buddy. I'm gonna harm the hell out of you.
Matt needs healing.
My breath weapon doesn't work on these.
Oh no, he doesn't like me. He doesn't like me.
God, scariest taunt I ever did.
Against these things?
Yeah.
You're okay.
I'm also scary.
Fine.
I was like, okay, cool, a gargoyle. Nope, 3 fucking dragons.
Oh my god.
If you enjoyed this video, check me out on Twitch, where I've been streaming DDO and other games with my guild. We've just started our journey into Barovia, and are excited for what's next. On top of that, we have an ongoing tabletop campaign that we stream every Saturday evening. Feel free to subscribe if you want to get alerts about future videos like this. Thank you for watching.